Did you know that on this day, George H.W. Bush declared Kuwait liberated? Stick around to learn how the Gulf War unfolded and the key moments that led to this historic announcement. The Gulf War began as a significant military conflict at the end of the 20th century. It arose from escalating tensions between Iraq and Kuwait, fueled by a mix of territorial disputes and economic issues following the Iran-Iraq War. Iraq, led by President Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait on August 2, 1990, claiming that Kuwait was illegally drilling oil from the Iraqi side of the Rumaila oil field. This aggressive action shocked the international community and prompted immediate condemnation. Within 2 days, Iraq had effectively taken control of Kuwait and established a puppet government, while the United Nations swiftly reacted with Resolution 660, demanding Iraq's immediate withdrawal. This marked the beginning of a diplomatic effort that would lead to a multinational coalition against Iraq's invasion. President George H.W. Bush responded decisively, mobilizing U.S. troops to Saudi Arabia as part of Operation Desert Shield. This military buildup was the largest since World War II, with coalition forces from 42 countries ultimately assembling to confront Iraq's actions. As the situation in the region escalated, UN sanctions were imposed, and an ultimatum was set for Iraq to withdraw by January 15, 1991. This period saw heightened tensions and a continuous spotlight on the threats posed by Iraq. With the deadline approaching, preparations for a military response were underway. The coalition forces readied their strategies and forces for retaliation, which would soon culminate in Operation Desert Storm, starting on January 17, 1991. This operation would define a new chapter in modern warfare. As the countdown progressed, the world waited with bated breath to see if diplomacy would prevail or if military action would be warranted. The announcement of impending conflict loomed over global politics, stirring emotions across borders. In the days leading up to the war, tensions escalated as Iraq's President Saddam Hussein voiced his grievances against Kuwait, citing debt issues from the Iran-Iraq War and accusing Kuwait of overproducing oil contrary to OPEC agreements. Iraq felt its economic stability was at risk. As the rhetoric intensified, Saddam threatened military action against Kuwait. On July 31, 1990, U.S. Ambassador April Glaspie met with Saddam Hussein, indicating that the U.S. would not interfere in Arab-Arab conflicts, which may have emboldened his decision to invade. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi forces launched a sudden invasion of Kuwait. Their military overwhelmed Kuwaiti defenses within hours, leading to the establishment of a puppet government as they sought to assert control rapidly. In response to this invasion, the international community rallied for Kuwait's sovereignty. The United Nations Security Council quickly passed Resolution 660, calling for Iraq to withdraw immediately, and significantly condemned the aggression. To enforce the sanctions imposed against Iraq, a military buildup began in Saudi Arabia. This massive deployment of coalition forces involving 42 nations represented the largest military alliance since World War II, exemplifying a unified stance against Saddam's aggression. As Operation Desert Shield continued, the deadline for Iraq's withdrawal approached. The coalition forces strategized and conducted training exercises while anticipating the order for military engagement, making preparations for the ensuing campaign. On January 15, 1991, the deadline for Iraqi withdrawal expired. With no compliance from Iraq, the coalition prepared itself for the military operations that would soon follow, setting the stage for Operation Desert Storm. On January 17, 1991, the coalition launched Operation Desert Storm with a meticulously planned aerial bombing campaign. Over the next 42 days, coalition forces executed more than 100,000 sorties, targeting Iraqi military infrastructure and destroying key objectives. The air campaign aimed to cripple Iraq's military capabilities before ground troops advanced. Iraq's air defenses were surprisingly ineffective against the coalition's technologically advanced aircraft, resulting in relatively low conflict casualties for the attackers. As January progressed, Iraq retaliated by launching Scud missiles at coalition forces, targeting military bases in Saudi Arabia and even reaching Israel. These missile strikes aimed to provoke Israel into military action, potentially fracturing the coalition's unity. Despite these attempts, the coalition stood strong. American and coalition leaders held firm, ensuring that Israel would not retaliate, which was critical in maintaining the coalition's diverse support and highlighting the strategic aim of the operation. On February 24, 1991, after effectively diminishing Iraqi defenses, the coalition commenced its ground offensive. This decisive action was dubbed Operation Desert Saber, marking the beginning of the ground assault aimed at liberating Kuwait. The liberation operation progressed swiftly, as Iraqi forces offered little resistance. In just a few days, Kuwaiti areas previously held by Iraq were freed, showcasing the effectiveness of coalition planning and coordination. By the end of February, coalition forces successfully liberated Kuwait. The swift and strategic movement was largely successful. However, the retreating Iraqi forces inflicted damage, setting fire to oil wells and creating an environmental disaster. After the liberation of Kuwait, President George H.W. Bush addressed the nation and the world on February 28, 1991. He declared that Kuwait was free from Iraqi occupation, marking a significant moment for the coalition and the United States as a whole. The liberation marks the conclusion of a conflict that had seen unprecedented military cooperation among 42 nations. Countries such as the United Kingdom, France, and several Arab states fought alongside the United States against Iraq to uphold Kuwait's sovereignty. Despite the victory, the aftermath of the war presented significant challenges. Iraqi forces, upon retreating, executed a scorched earth policy, setting fire to nearly 700 oil wells in Kuwait, leading to an environmental catastrophe and economic challenges for the region. In the months that followed, Kuwait faced the daunting task of reconstruction. The coalition nations provided assistance, but the damage to infrastructure and the environment would have lasting effects for years to come. The war also stirred up complex social and political issues. Many individuals who were displaced during the Iraqi occupation struggled to return, while the Kuwaiti government faced challenges in addressing grievances from those who had fled or lost their homes. Internationally, the Gulf War had profound effects. The U.S. kept a military presence in the region to stabilize it, leading to increased tensions in the Middle East and contributing to future conflicts. On the diplomatic front, the war highlighted the need for effective international responses to acts of aggression, reshaping the geopolitical landscape in the Middle East. The coalition's success in liberating Kuwait set a precedent for future international military alliances.